Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Gill, and I am the Director of Cobb Senior Services. We welcome you here tonight for the second session of a four-session program called Aging by Design. Tonight, the topic is elder abuse, so if you're here for anything else, you're welcome to stay. There's a lot of great information that you're going to learn. I wanted to let you know we're doing all this fancy stuff because we're recording tonight. We wanted this to be available on our website and to be passed around for those who could not make it. We know it's a weekday evening and it's hard sometimes to get to see this. So that's why everybody's up here and the lights are on. If you have a question, we will try to bring the mic to you so that we can catch it with the cameras. We may not be able to, but I'll have the speaker repeat the question as well. So I wanted to just welcome you all and say, if you're here to see Vic Reynolds, our district attorney, he actually had a little mishap last week and ended up in the hospital, and so he's doing well now. He's recovering, and he will not be here this evening. And I know he sends his apologies for that. He had a really good reason, so we'll let it go this time. He's usually at every one of these events, and we thank him for that. And he actually brought in a great person to take his place tonight, and I'm going to introduce him in a second. But I wanted to give you a few housekeeping items. If you haven't noticed, through the glass door back there, there's the restrooms. I have a sign-in sheet. I'd love to get your information just to capture who is here this evening. We also have an evaluation form in the back that I'd love for you to fill out to give us some insight as to what we can do better. And there's information on our May 2nd event, which is coming up next week. And we hope that you can attend that. It's a seminar at the Cobb Galleria. There's an expo going on with vendors, and it's $5 and you get a lunch. Can't beat that. So we'd love to see you register if you haven't already. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, and then I'm going to go ahead and introduce John. You wait, John, and just so you know who's here tonight, so we can see. Go ahead.
Jeff Wood from the, Jeff Wood from the Elder Abuse Task Force, and so I'll say that there are 3 officers of the task force. Vic, who's not here tonight, but he's the chairman, and Barry Morgan, who's our Solicitor General, is the vice chair, and I'm the secretary, and so good to see everyone here this evening.
Yeah, Joe Gavalis, I'm with the Cobb Elder Abuse Task Force and the criminal coordinator of the criminal court.
Jason Marbett, I am an assistant district attorney in the district attorney's office, and I prosecute elder abuse crimes along with John Melvin.
David Sanders, I'm a major with the Cobb County Sheriff's Office. I'm the commander of the Criminal Investigations Unit, and it's an honor to be here tonight representing Sheriff Neil Warren, Chief Deputy Milton Beck. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Dan Flynn. I'm Chief of the Marietta Police Department, also a member of the Cobb Elder Abuse Task Force, and glad to see you all here tonight.
Good evening, I'm Colin Barry. I'm a detective with Marietta Police Department. I specialize in elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation.
I'm Debbie Keel. I'm an Adult Protective Services investigator and case manager.
Okay, so they're going to stay behind the mic so you can hear them. You guys can sit while we're doing that so that everybody can hear you. I want to introduce John Melvin. He is the Deputy Chief Assistant District Attorney for Cobb County. Here he is. He's doing this as a pinch hitter tonight, and we are so pleased. What he does is he supervises white collar, public integrity, and the elder abuse units. And there's a lot of stuff going on, which he's going to talk about tonight. He's also an adjunct professor at the John Marshall Law School, and he taught at Emory Law School. He has lectured to the FBI, the GBI, the National District Attorneys Association, Georgia's Prosecuting Attorneys Council, and is a frequent speaker on issues of evidence, trial practice, and criminal procedure to Georgia's bench and bar. And he's got a whole lot of other things behind his name, but I will just tell you we're so happy to have you this evening, and thank you for coming.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Gill. Ms. Gill is trying to be a little bit discreet. Let me go ahead and let you know what happened with him. He had a heart attack. It was in the paper this morning. So we're just thanking the Lord that he survived. He's going to be able to come back and be strong and be with us in just a couple of weeks. Just needs a little bit of downtime. But about 2 years ago, Mr. Reynolds, after meeting with our sheriff's department, with Chief Lynn and the other chiefs, when he came on as the elected district attorney, he became aware of a very serious problem that we have, not only in Cobb County and the state of Georgia, but one that we have nationally, and that's the problem of elder abuse. Now, elder abuse takes a lot of different forms. It can take the form of neglect. It can take the form of physical abuse. But tonight, what we're focusing on a little bit is the financial exploitation of our elder population. And I just kind of want to tell you why we call it a problem. If you look at the graph that's up on the screen right now, the population of age 65 in America, as you can see back at the decennial census in 2000, it's about 35 million people. It's about 40 now. Well, in 2030, it's going to be approximately 60 million, upwards of 80 million people by the year 2050. Now, as a percentage of the population, within the next 30 years, 1 out of every 4 people in our country are going to be above the age of 65. And it's something that we should expect as our baby boomer population actually moves into the age 65 and plus category. Experts are saying that financial abuse of our elder population is the crime of the 21st century. And anecdotally, Mr. Marvin and I know that Chief Sanders and Chief Lynn can verify, we are getting a significant number of calls for financial exploitation of our elderly. Just as a side note, Mr. Marvin here has also been very active in the prosecution of unlicensed daycare homes. And here in Cobb County, we actually, and Mr. Marvin just last week, indicted the first unlicensed daycare home under the brand new felony provisions of the state of Georgia. So we're active not only in financial exploitation, but in all of these areas. And I would like to thank the agencies that are present here, as well as the Cobb Elder Abuse Task Force and Ms. Gill, for helping to keep this on the forefront of everybody's consciousness. But let's keep on talking. For every case of elder abuse, the Department of Justice has reported only 1 out of 43 cases of elder abuse actually gets reported. So for every case you read about in the newspaper, every case that gets called into our sheriff's department or to the police department, it's only 1 out of 43. It's a very serious problem. It's very seriously underreported. So first off, let me thank y'all for coming, because y'all are our eyes and ears. And the agencies that are here will tell you that a large number of cases that we actually do get are cases that came to us because friends, family members, church members were concerned enough to get involved. On average, the latest statistics show that the average victim loses approximately $90,000. We actually just tried the largest financial exploitation case in the state of Georgia just a few weeks ago in Cobb County, thanks to Ms. Gill and her good testimony and the work of our sheriff's department. We actually have 2 perpetrators in jail for stealing over $4 million from one of our Cobb County citizens. Now, I'd like to tell you that only strangers commit elder abuse. But I come from a theological background that believes in total depravity. And unfortunately, I see it every single day. Let me tell you something. The largest amount of financial exploitation of our elder population comes from family members, comes from trusted people, has even come from churches and pastors. So, if I could leave you with something, be careful. Question everything. Stay involved. So let's keep on going, because I'd like to kind of give you an idea, because even after you have passed, the problem doesn't go away. There's a problem called ghosting that even after people have passed, identities have still been stolen and estates have been drained dry. 1.2 million identities are used by chance, crooks making up Social Security numbers. We recently indicted a large tax fraud scheme that tagged a large number of our elder population. The ghosting happens because your identity sometimes can be gotten from hospital records, and unscrupulous nurses, unscrupulous attendants can get your financial and identifying information and have used that to drain estates dry. Sometimes they'll get it from funeral homes and that information. Your obituary should only list the highlights. But common types of fraud targets family members. The statistics are showing about 79%. Theft by caregivers, 49%. Financial scams by strangers, 47%. Power of attorney abuses, large percentage of that, and it keeps on going down. Exploitation of home equity. Let's talk about who commits financial exploitation. Just a couple of categories. If it's not a family member and it's a stranger, we're seeing them in the various home repair scams that we see around the county. I like to call it the Irish travelers because that's essentially what they are, Irish gypsies. They're running around and coming up to you and saying, hey, you got a little pocket in your driveway and we can fix it for you for $500. And then all of a sudden the bill is $4,000. If you hear of a story like this, it is not the first time. Let us know. Also, there's the internet fraud. Anybody here ever get the Jamaican letter saying you've won? Or how about the one from Nigeria? Hey, the vice president, he's hiding like $5 million and you'll just give him your information and you can keep 10%. We actually have people falling prey to that. And you think that's sad, but they're falling prey, and then they don't want to report because they're embarrassed about it. We also have lottery and sweepstakes scams, the internet fraud letters. We have the grandparent scam. That's actually something that's kind of brand new, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Debt relief scams, funeral fraud. The grandparent scam is a phone call purportedly from a grandchild that says, hey, I'm in jail and I need your credit card information for bond. Be very careful for that. Funeral fraud. We're actually finding out. And the funeral companies are actually governed by federal law. There's some things they can charge and some things they can't charge. They have to provide you a listing for all goods and services offered, for caskets, for grave liners or outer burial chambers. And in 2013, so 1 in 4 funeral homes were out of compliance with federal law on these issues, just so you can be aware. It also requires that services have to be optional, such as embalming, and that you don't have to buy a casket directly from the funeral home in order to enlist their services. That's just something to remember. It also forbids charging extra for services if you choose to buy your caskets elsewhere. Now, who are the possible abusers as well as strangers? Well, we have caregiver strangers, we have elder service providers, family, neighborhoods, telemarketers, new friends, organized transient crime families like the Irish travelers, really essentially anybody. Trusted individuals like we talked about, family members, caregivers, partners. Who commits it? Like, and I call this the sweetheart scam. Right? And I'm hearing that when you turn 70 and 80, that your sex drive doesn't die. And I'm hoping that's true. But apparently, men, we get preyed upon for that. So just be aware of that. Trusted individuals, lawyers, doctors, faith leaders, interpreters who have a unique relationship. Trusted individuals, guardians, power of attorney, and other legal representatives. Now, power of attorney, just so we can touch on it real quick, and we're coming to a conclusion on my section of it, but that's an instrument where you can delegate to another person the authority to make health care or financial decisions for somebody. They're very, very useful. When my mama went into the hospital, she gave me her power of attorney because she's going to be under for a few weeks. There's also a term that you might hear called guardianship, and that's where you give guardianship to somebody to control the affairs of the other person, perhaps because of dementia or the onset of Alzheimer's. But whatever it's power of attorney or it's a guardianship, it is not a license to steal. And when someone has a power of attorney or someone has a guardianship, it is a fiduciary relationship, and they have to use that relationship for the benefit of the person that granted that. And if somebody tells you different, you should be suspect. Listen. Okay. So, hey, let's just talk about victimology real quick, too. Women are more vulnerable than men. Perpetrators, more than often than not, tend to be men. 60% of the perpetrators are men. Most victims are between the ages of 80 and 89, live alone, require some level of health or health care or home maintenance. Most of the male perpetrators are between the ages of 30 and 40, between the ages of 30 and 59. Most female perpetrators are between the ages of 30 and 39. just so you're aware. Now, 1 in 20 older adults indicated some form of perceived financial mistreatment by a family member. The recent studies indicate that the prevalence of exploitation is high, but rarely reported, like we kind of talked about earlier. Here's some statistics too. If the family member is the perpetrator, the victim is less likely to report it than an acquaintance. But if the family member is a stranger, the victim is almost twice as likely to report it as an acquaintance. Prevalence of financial abuse, spending money without permission, forging signatures, force victims to sign, victims just had it flat out have their money stolen. So what are some of the barriers to reporting when you're dealing with members of your church or members of your community? Well, some of them are obvious. Fear, embarrassment, social isolation, sometimes self-blame, but also the inability to report whether there's a physical impairment or an actual mental impairment. And so let's talk about real quick, what is financial exploitation? Because those are words and actually it comes straight out of our code section. But it's when you knowingly and willfully exploit a disabled or an elder person. And that's our Georgia code. To be able to exploit, what do you mean by that? Well, it's undue influence. It can be coercion. It can be harassment, deception, false representation, false pretenses, or other similar means for one's own or another person's profit or advantage. And one of those magic words up there is undue influence. What that means is it's influence, persuasion, or pressure that is just short of actual force, but stronger than mere advice that overpowers a person's will. And in this case, you also have to consider the capacity of the victim in the case. I mean, are they a person that is subject to influences? Like my grandmother was the most trusting soul I've ever known, sweetest lady I've ever known. My mama, on the other hand, a little bit tougher nut to crack. and something could persuade my grandmama a lot quicker than my mama. And so you kind of take it, you don't have hard, fast rules on exploitation because you have to consider the capacity and the ability and the personality, quite frankly, of the victim. Now let's talk about mental capacity versus undue influence. You can have undue influence without mental impairment. You can have mental impairment without undue influence, but both address the issue of vulnerability. You can have people that are not mentally impaired at all, they're perfectly fine, they'll score 120 on the IQ test, but they're still subject to undue influence. So it's a case-by-case basis without hard and fast rules. One of the recent cases that we talked about, this is the largest case of financial exploitation in Georgia history, and it happened here in Cobb County. It was put together by a sheriff's department. They did an awesome job. By Adult Protective Service, who did an awesome job. And by friends and family who actually gave a flip. And they just saw what was happening. And y'all might, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but the Perkins Ant family, they owned half of East Cobb about 100 years ago. Sweet family. This is a lady who grew up in the Depression era, and if she went to a restaurant, she ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, but she preferred to stay at home and eat hot dogs because they were cheap. Well, over time, through the selling of various property, they had accumulated millions of dollars. Now, all this is in the paper, and I'm not giving away any secrets. But she had two daughters who had been estranged from each other. She had onset of dementia, very frugal her whole life. She signed over a power of attorney. This young guy by the name of Jeff Carr wheedled his way into her daughter's affections. And eventually, the daughter introduced her to Mama. Mama, being a very trusting soul, signed over the power of attorney and said, okay, I want you to pay my bills. The total that she lost, it says $3.6 million, but it was actually $4 million. We were able, at the time, because the estate was worth almost $20 million, we were able, because he had open access to it, because of the quick thinking of our sheriff's department, we were able to freeze the estate at $8 million so he couldn't drain anymore, and then we brought charges. Those are the two perpetrators. It's Jeff Carr and his father, Joseph Carr. They groomed her, they used her, and in very short order, they drained $44 million in 22 months. And what happened is reports started coming into Adult Protective Services about the potential exploitation. When APS went to investigate Jeff Carr, he started moving Francis from location to location, and they're saying, we need to interview her, we have to interview her, we got to interview her, we got to do an assessment on her, and lo and behold, he'd move her in the middle of the night until finally he wound up and moved her into his daddy's home. And whenever Adult Protective Services would come up, they would insinuate themselves into the meeting. They'd be constantly there, so it would be almost an ineffective interview to a certain point, but Adult Protective Services was too smart to let it go, and they kept on trying, and the Sheriff's Department got involved. So, just so you know, Jeff Carr, the son, when he met Mrs. Perkins, his bank account was negative $4,337. After, when we came down with the arrest warrants, 22 months later, he had $1.7 million. All of it was her. He had no outside employment. In 22 months, he withdrew $450,000 in cash, bought 4 Cadillac Escalades, $26,000 in jewelry, restaurants. You know how much Miss Perkins got? 0. Oh, but I had her power of attorney. Oh, but she wanted me to have this money. All right. Joseph Carr, the father, bank balance before Miss Perkins, $1.4 thousand. Bank balance after Miss Perkins, $24,000. He got 3 cars. He paid off his mortgage early with $40,000. But hey, he gave $100 to his church. You got a crown waiting for you in heaven. To Miss Perkins, 0. So they had access to over $12 million. Total loss actually $4 million. Total recovery $4 million. And our judge, Judge Leonard, in the case sentenced Jeff Carr 40 years to serve 10 with restitution, and then Joseph Carr 40 years to serve 2 with restitution. And that was the most recent case that we have. And it's because of people like you and because of the excellent work of the agencies. And let me tell you something. The numbers that we are seeing is starting to get a little bit overwhelming. We need more people on the street, and we need more people in our offices prosecuting cases like this. And whenever you get a chance to speak to the Commissioner, if you'd let him know that, it'd be deeply appreciated. God bless you, and thank you.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, John. So, again, Jeff Wood, Elder Abuse Task Force. I have a few kind of opening statements in terms of what is the Elder Abuse Task Force, and then get us to a point where, and if you guys, I know you came in a little bit late, but if you want to come down a little closer, what we're hoping to do is have a little conversation. Actually, I know this seems a little intimidating with the folks, but we couldn't set it up any other way. But we will have sort of a question and answer and hope to have this very much of a dialogue. So one of the concepts that the Elder Abuse Task Force is all about is you'll take a look at it. If you see something, if you believe that something is wrong, so you can feel it, right? You look at the situation and you say, it doesn't feel right. If it were me, I'm pretty sure this would be wrong, right? If you see something like that, say something, okay? The folks up here that represent the Elder Abuse Task Force can't act all by themselves, right? They can't know everything that's going out in the community. So we ask that you participate in this. A number of years ago, we had a similar situation when we all talked about child abuse, right? No one was participating in the conversation, and then they did, and we're doing something about it. Same thing with elder abuse is it's time that we all start talking about it, sharing the information, and making sure that we're not letting these types of things happen. So what does the Elder Abuse Task Force do? We have 3 letters, C, S, for seek participation and collaboration, right? So we'll show you a slide, and you can see some of the participants right here. But we have all the cities within Cobb County. We have the county. We have the state of Georgia represented, and one of them are right here today, as well as the federal government. So we've reached out to far and wide to participate in this initiative, which is an ongoing initiative. It isn't a 1 or 2 day issue. So educate these types of programs. We're also doing programs at churches and other community events where we can talk to people about it. And if you think about it, anyone here, right, if you're thinking about it, you said, to be honest, right, I know of a situation where something is going wrong, either now or in the past, but everyone's had this experience. So education, physical, financial, institutional abuse and neglect, and then enforcement. And one of the things that John talked about here is the ability to have now a felony charge for unlicensed care facilities. That was actually something that we all participated in with a great individual, Sharon Cooper, who's also on the Elder Abuse Task Force, and she believes in this issue with her heart. And she said, I'm going to do something about it. You've got to help me, but we're going to get legislation through. So from an unlicensed care facility, it used to be a misdemeanor and nobody really wanted to do anything about it, right? It's not that they didn't, in their hearts, want to do something about it, but it's a misdemeanor. There are a lot of serious things out there. So now it's up to the felony level, and people are doing something about it. Here's a list. I know it's a little bit difficult to see, and it's a partial list, but it does give you a very good view of some of the participants in the Elder Abuse Task Force. And I know why I'm going through this for you, because probably no one's ever heard of it here in this room before, I would imagine, right? So we have cities, the state government, Health and Human Services, Adult Protective Services is with us here. We also have from the federal government, Health and Human Services and Social Security Administration. We did an event a few weeks ago where we had 6 members of the GBI. We had 6 members of the federal government there in the meeting with us, actively participating with us. And so they've really got their eyes on this and they want to help. So it's going to be for all of us to do. So now we're going to go into the part where this is going to be sort of a conversation between the participants and the panel members here and yourself. And I'll just kind of start the ball rolling here with some of these financial scams. Again, the task force does take into account, you know, physical, financial, institutional. Today, as John was mentioning, the vast majority of the issues out there are financial. And so many of them are happening, and that afterwards you kind of go, holy smokes, I wish I had done something about that, or I wish I had spoken up, or I wish something had happened. This is our time to talk about that a little bit and get some advice from the panel members, but also get some thoughts from you in terms of some of the things that you're seeing and what you would like to see differently in our community. So from the financial scams, everyone's getting them, right? We're going to talk about current cases, and then most importantly, what do you do? Either what do you do when it's happening to you or a loved one, or what do you do in anticipation of it happening? And this is a tough one, because when we start to talk about, hey, why don't you practice saying no to someone? You think, well, that's kind of silly, right? I can say no. But it becomes a lot more difficult when you're in a pressure situation, when someone who says they're from the sheriff's department and they're not, or the federal government and they're not, and you know it in your heart, but they're saying to you, hey, look it, you know, you've got to do such and such. So we've got to actually practice saying no and doing some different things. So we'll talk about that. Anyone can get scammed. We have had so many different meetings, and we've been speaking with people and some folks that have come to me in a pretty pointed way and said, you know, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe these folks are that stupid. You know, how could they have all that money taken from them? And in the case of some of these cases, it's not about I gave up my information to somebody else, right? It was taken. So it was nothing I did wrong, but yet it happened to me anyways. So the key things here are, if it sounds too good to be true, if it really does, it's Nigeria, it's $8 million. It's not happening, right? It's really too good to be true. If someone's rushing you, if they're pushing you into a decision or something like that, just tell them we need a little cooling off period. You know, this will be good tomorrow too. So why don't we think about it in a day or two, okay? And then when it comes to these telephone calls that everyone gets, right? They're calling you. You're not calling them. If I called the sheriff's department or the police department or the district attorney's office, I know who's at the other end. But when they're calling me, there's some things that we'll talk about here tonight in terms of where people are masking their telephone number and making it look like something else. You don't know. It looks like something that's perhaps correct, and that you should be speaking with them, but it isn't. So the importance are protect your information. Why are the seniors targeted? Well, they've built up assets, right, for the most part. Trusting individuals. They couldn't do this to me, right? So many times it's something that's happening within your family or someone who's trusted. How could that happen to me? No one could do that to me. Why are they, you know? So it's a trusting, a polite type of environment where you say, you know, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, okay? But we've got to go back to the heart and say if it really does feel wrong, then it probably is. So in terms of identity theft, what it is someone is trying to get your information, and they successfully do it. And there are a number of different ways that they can get that information. It can be from your garbage can, or it can be from your computer, or from a number of different fashions. So what we'll do is talk right now with the panelists here in terms of identity theft, what they're seeing out in the community, and what they'd recommend in terms of protecting yourself. And I think perhaps we start with the sheriff's office. And one of the things that might be good too in terms of the audience is to describe financial crimes in the context of the sheriff's department versus the police. Because a lot of times people say, hey, if it's something that's illegal, right, I'm going to go to the 911, I'm going to call the police department, which is a good thing to do. But maybe you could describe where the sheriff's office fits in along with everyone else, and then maybe talk about the identity theft a bit.
Well, Jeff's correct. The sheriff's office, we have a dedicated fraud unit, and one of the reasons I think it was set up like this years ago is the sheriff's office doesn't have some of the jurisdictional issues that some of the local agencies and the county police or county police have as well. We can go into other counties, and they can too under certain conditions, but we have a little freer access. So as Chief Flynn will tell you, the police departments do work fraud, they do work financial crimes, and I'll tell you, we work other crimes. We have general detectives as well, but we do have a dedicated fraud unit. We currently have 11 investigators, and we have some additional positions coming about this year. So, and identity theft, everyone knows what a problem that is. There's just so many ways that you can protect your information. The ultimate way to protect yourself from identity theft is you can actually freeze your credit with the 3 major credit bureaus. It's a nominal charge, maybe $3 when you freeze it or unfreeze it. Only you can unfreeze your credit. That way no new accounts can get opened with your identifiers if someone does get them. So that is the ultimate way to lock yourself down with your credit and protect yourself. There are also several very good companies that have identity protection services that they offer. We see numerous scams in addition to the identity fraud. One of the current big scams that we've been dealing with, and Sheriff Warren has made numerous announcements over various forms of media over the last year about the grand jury scheme that's going on, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. You get a telephone call from someone identifying themselves as a deputy, or I've heard them as highest colonel, but they'll say they're with the sheriff's office, and they'll tell you you failed to show up for grand jury, and the judge has issued a warrant for your arrest, and the sheriff's office is about to come lock you up unless you pay the fine right now. And they will tell you to go get a loadable credit card. Green Dot is the predominant one that we see. There's other cards as well, vanilla, but they'll tell you you need to go down, get a Green Dot card, stay on the phone with me, and just load $500 on it as an example. I've seen it as high as $5,000. They'll tell you the amount to load on it, and then they'll tell you to give them the number on the card. And on the cards themselves, when you buy them, it explicitly tells you at the bottom, do not give this information to anyone. But unfortunately, some people do. And on the loadable credit cards, they are so difficult to trace. We have very limited success due to the turnaround time. We have to subpoena the information from the company. It sometimes takes several weeks to get back, and then by the time we're able to go where the card was used, most of the time there's no video. Retailers and most establishments only maintain 30 days is the common practice. It's 30 to 90 days worth of video. So it's an effective scam that has had a lot of victims. I will tell you that we have got a very large case, and we're working with federal authorities. This is nationwide, this scam is, and there's numerous variations. So we have seen some arrests, we have made some arrests, and hopefully we will continue.
And Major, maybe you could tell us also a little bit about the volume of cases. Do you have half a dozen or?
Yes. As far as the grand jury scam, I think we've got roughly 150 is the last count. The elderly exploitation cases, currently we have around 135 cases. In the month of March, we took in 16 exploitation cases. We actually cleared 31, so we actually made a little progress last month. We're trying to dedicate more and more resources to it, and we're just so fortunate that our prosecutors work so well with us. They give us direction when we need it, and when we build these cases, we want to see them succeed. And our cohorts at the DA's office, solicitor's office, we frequently meet with them just to make sure that we're building a case that can be successfully prosecuted, and they frequently give us insights and direction. So the exploitation cases range everything from caretakers to family members, like Mr. Melvin was pointing out. One of the things that I like to tell people is so often we see someone fall victim to exploitation where the family members really have taken no interest in that person or their life or their financial matters. Frequently we'll see a caretaker come in and gain the trust, and sometimes they'll take advantage of them. We've had cases that the family members, once someone passes away, they start reviewing the financial records, and they'll suspect fraud, but they never took the interest beforehand. And I'm not saying all of them are that way by any means, but that is one thing that we see is all of a sudden it becomes very important after the fact when we've lost our key witness to the whole thing. So it's important for our senior members to have their financial affairs in place. We had a case recently where some things did look suspicious. We did an investigation that took weeks, and one of the final things the investigator did was met with the elder person's attorney. And I'm going to say elder person rather than victim, because once he met with the attorney who we have no reason to believe but had anything but her client's best interest in mind. She said, my client was perfectly lucid. These were his wishes. And so we just need to make sure our affairs are in order. It's good. In this case, this person, her attorney knew him, was familiar with his state of mind, and it's important. It's important to have your affairs in order, and it's important to be involved with your parents or other close family members who are elderly, to be involved, to be there for them so that they're not taken advantage of.
And I think that I think you'll find also from everyone here, right? You'd prefer to put in the work, right? Do the investigation, work with people, and find out maybe it was nothing or maybe it was their best wishes. But to just make sure that that's true. Again, back to the, if it doesn't feel right, maybe it is, but wouldn't we all sleep better? Wouldn't we all feel better about ourselves if we took the action and made sure that someone looked into it? And maybe at the end of the day, we find out everything is fine. In terms of tonight, we have the district attorney office represented here. Our Barry Morgan, who's our Solicitor General, handles a particular caseload and a dollar value. And maybe I'd have the folks from the district attorney kind of talk about where financial crimes fit in terms of both offices. So the one important point to know is, right, Barry is on this task force as vice chairman. Vic is our chair. Both are committed to this. So if it's a small amount or a large amount, it doesn't matter. It's important to you. It's important to your family, your loved ones. So it's important that we go after it. So, but from this evening's point of view, we'll talk from district attorney.
Well, I can speak to the crime of elder exploitation itself is a felony regardless of the amount. So if the victim is 65 years of age or older, elder exploitation is a felony. It doesn't matter if it's $1. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million. It doesn't matter because we take those crimes so seriously. If it's just a theft and you don't charge the elder exploitation component, so say it's a 64-year-old who's not disabled, because similarly the disabled statute applies the same as, so disabled exploitation is included in the statute with elder exploitation. So if you're not disabled and you're not elderly, theft or theft by deception or theft by conversion or the various forms of theft, anything over $1,500 is a felony. Anything below that amount is a misdemeanor. Identity theft is a felony regardless of the amount. Financial transaction card theft or financial transaction card fraud, so that would be if somebody steals your credit card and goes to Walmart or the gas station or wherever and uses that to purchase something for themselves. That's a felony regardless of the amount. The penalties for those various felonies are different. You could get up to 10 years for an identity theft or identity fraud. You could get 2 to 3 years for financial transaction card fraud. Misdemeanors are all 12 months, or that's what makes it a misdemeanor. The penalty is less. Felony elder exploitation is a 20-year offense. You can get up to 20 years. And identity theft is up to 10. I think that's the bulk of the crimes that we've been talking about now.
Are there questions from the audience in terms of, yes, thank you. Oh, wait a minute.
If you get regular reports from your credit protection agency and there's a notation on there that an individual has used your credit at some time in the past, what is the proper protocol besides notifying the 3 credit reporting agencies of the error? Is there something else doing that in writing to get it permanently erased from your credit?
That's going to be covered by federal law, and it's going to be covered by the Fair Debt Collection Act, which monitors the credit card companies too. And and what you said is exactly right. You have to write the credit card you have to write the credit agencies a letter saying this information is wrongfully attached and I want it removed. Should they not do it, the statute provides for what's called trouble damages for whatever amount of damage or loss that you suffered, and that means up to 3 times the amount of loss that you suffered. Whatever you do, just make sure you have a paper trail, that anything you send to these agencies, that you have return receipt requested so that you can prove that they got notice and that they were under an obligation to remove it. And you said that some information has been used it was used inappropriately?
I guess I was told that the individual took out an account, but it was paid off or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes you want to differentiate if it's in there, if they did it inadvertently or they did it purposefully. Like my wife, for example, her Social Security number had been used by somebody, and when we looked into it, their Social Security number was like the same except transposed 2 different numbers. But if they're taking out credit cards in your names, that's clearly wrong. So on your side, take care of the credit stuff, and then turn over the information of the fraudulent use to the appropriate law enforcement agency.
And one of the benefits for in Georgia legally is the statute of limitations for crimes if the victim is 65 years of age or older is actually 15 years. So even if it's old and on your credit report, that's something that could still be prosecuted.
Excellent. Any other questions here? Yes.
Thank you, Jason. It's for you. My father had an attorney that had presented a case, laid it out, paperwork and everything, to one of the investigators. He still never even contacted my father. No one has. It's been almost 3 years that we've been trying to fight with him and to get something done. What could we do there?
Go up the chain of command.
And I know you said that was for me, but I assume, are you saying you reported it to the sheriff's office or?
My father's attorney did, yes, sir.
Okay.
And I have some of the correspondence here.
If you're ever dissatisfied with an officer or an investigator, the appropriate measure is to go up the chain of command. And one of the things to realize is if Major Sanders does not work for Vic Reynolds, he works for the elected sheriff. Chief Flynn doesn't work for the DA. He works for the city of Marietta. And so I can't call up and say, hey, you get your guy to do this. That would be inappropriate, in as much as they can't call us and say, hey, you talk to this ADA.
Right.
We talk to each other. We got a great relationship. But if y'all responded, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's a problem with an investigation or an investigator, go up the chain of command to the sergeant, to the lieutenant, to the captain, to the major, and then to the
Okay.
sheriff.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And ma'am, if you would provide me the information after this is over, I'll be glad to look into it. I'll give you a card and I'll give you a call tomorrow. Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. And one of the things also that we've set up and is an anonymous tip line. And for those of you who may have picked up either a brochure in the back or what have you, we'll have the information up there. If there's something that you feel as if is going wrong or potentially wrong, right? And you say, geez, I'd like to tell someone about it, but maybe it's a little bit close. John talked about in his presentation, an unwillingness to necessarily go to the police because it's your son or your grandson or your granddaughter or your nephew or what have you, or if it's someone that that you are depending upon, but you also think that they're doing something wrong. What we've set up is an anonymous tip line. And it can be anonymous. You don't need to put a name or telephone number or what have you there if you don't wish to. If you want a response back, we have to have a telephone number to give you a call back on. But it is a way for you to reach out and say what's on your mind and allow the detectives and what have you to go ahead and do their job, look into the situation, and find out if it's something that is truly wrong or not. In terms of some of the things for identity theft, some best practices or tips that we provide to you. The mailbox can be a challenging situation because you're not always necessarily right there when the mail is coming or when it's being picked up or what have you. And so a locking mailbox, so when someone puts mail in there, it is locked. But never put valuables in the mailbox for overnight, because much like when you've heard from the police, hopefully you have lock your car door, right? Because they're flippers. So there are people that just go around and find out, is a door unlocked? If so, I'll go in and take a look what's inside the car. Same thing with the mailbox. A locking mailbox, if it just doesn't open, they're not going to take time to figure out how to unlock it and what have you. So one of the other things on Social Security numbers, we all get forms to fill out, and some of them are old, right? And they always ask, what's your Social Security number? Recommendation is ask them if they actually need that written. And if it's written down, what's going to happen to it after that piece of paper leaves our presence, right? Is it going to be shredded? Or just say, I prefer not to put that down, because that's an invitation for something to happen at some point in time. The credit freezes, and hopefully everyone understood that. It's a way of just, if you're not going to purchase a new house or a new car or get a loan of some sort, you don't need your credit right now. If it's frozen, no one can do something about that. So don't, oh, yep, we have actually a question in the back. Hold on one second. Well, we actually need the microphone so people can hear you.
So the question I have is, when you freeze your credit, though, you're still allowed to use your credit cards. You just don't gain new accounts. Is that so? That prevents someone else from establishing credit in your name. Is that right? Okay.
Correct.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you.
And, question here too.
We are routinely asked by everybody for Social Security number. Every doctor's office, every lab report, et cetera, insists on. They can't take you as a patient without it. And then you're required to sign these HIPAA forms that essentially waive all your rights. Can we refuse to do those? Are doctors and those offices legally allowed to force us to give that information as a condition for doing business with us?
Yes, sir, and they can, but under HIPAA, when they say you're releasing all your rights, actually you're not. HIPAA actually provides a really extensive protection of your medical information, and there's severe penalties for sharing somebody's medical information. I think that's why Ms. Gill was so careful about Vic's medical information, but
That's
he
exactly
made the
why.
newspaper. He made it public, right? But doctors can, and the reason for that is if you skip out on the bill, they need to be able to find out where you are. And so, yeah, and I don't like giving my information out. Like when I go to St. Simon's and rent a bicycle and they copy my driver's license, I say, hey, I want that back when I turn in my bicycle. But at doctor's offices, yeah, they can require it. And your choice is not to use that doctor.
But everybody requires it. I don't know any
Right.
doctor who doesn't say
I know.
he's willing to do that. He said we'll go somewhere else.
And there is and that's one of the exposures that we have in our criminal justice
Sorry,
system.
I work at a hospital and your Social Security number. I work at a hospital and your Social Security number is your Medicare number. So if you want us to bill Medicare, we have to have that number.
Right.
So, and we will put it in medical records. We're not going to give it to anyone.
But so you can't really protect your Social Security number.
There's no 100% protection on anything. And I wish there were, but we don't have a perfect society. That is one of the weaknesses in our society. Let me tell you a couple other weaknesses, too, if I could have 2 seconds. Every time you go to the QT and you swipe your credit card at the QT, if you see a car that looks a little bit suspicious, One of the things that they can do now is they can have a capture device that captures the information being transmitted from the gas pump up to the satellite dish that goes up to the QT in the sky. And we have seen where just by swiping your credit card at a gas pump, people have been able to capture that data right there. So eyes and ears open. Anything that looks suspicious anywhere at all times. I wish we lived in a better society, but we don't.
So excellent, thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
And so to that point, if it has to be provided, find out though if it's written down, what's going to happen to that written down piece of paper, right? And a lot of times what I'll just say is I leave it blank until someone says, well, no, I actually do have to. Okay, well then I'm going to give it to you. Otherwise, some of these things you're handing out information about yourself all over the place. One thing I just wanted to, on the anonymous tip line, if people have a pen and paper or pick up one of these brochures, it's 770-794-6990. And again, that allows you the opportunity to provide some information and allow members of the task force and the law enforcement community to take a look into that. And it can be also something that it might be a social issue where it may not be something that's against the law, but you don't know, right? It doesn't look right. If this needs to go to Adult Protective Services or it needs to go to Senior Services, Jessica's group, maybe they need Meals on Wheels, or maybe they need something, whatever. You have a compassion in your heart about this particular situation, you can call it in and let us figure out what to do with it. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the sweepstakes and the lottery advance fee scams. Everyone's getting those, and we do have a question here. This is good because I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. So,
excuse me. Several years ago, when I first moved back to Marietta, I still received some. I received an abundance of letters telling me how to get rich, to send some money in, psychics, or from all these different foundations and all this. And at one time, I mailed a bunch into a fraud place here. I forget where it was. Do you still have that? Because I get these letters, and I don't know where it was. But I would put them in the mail. Sometimes I send them back to the post office, but I still get them. And I get anonymous telephone number, calls. So I tell them, since they're anonymous, I'm anonymous, and I don't know them, and I hang up. Because I don't, if it's anonymous, if you can't give me a name, I don't know you. Why should I talk to you?
exactly, yes.
And you get a lot of them.
Good point. Is there any other, maybe Detective Collins, I think you're running into a lot of different cases and maybe some best practices in terms of the either sweepstakes, lottery, advance fee scams, different things like this?
I had one of these last week. A lady, she's 83 years old, was going to win $8.5 million to the Mega Millions lottery. They sent her a notice with her name written on a big check. She just needed to pay transfer fees, acceptance fees. She got moved to the next level, and before they could cut the check, she had to pay another $500 just so that it could, an approval fee. We caught it early. Her bank noticed it. I don't know if you know or not, but banks are mandatory reporters. This lady withdrew maybe $150 a week to pay her bills. And then she suddenly started withdrawing $1,000, and then 3 days later, $1,500. Then the next day, $2,000. They said, this is unusual. And they called me. I spoke with her, and she did not want me to speak with her family because she was very embarrassed. She had only written about $3,000. Actually, she didn't write anything. They made her wire the money to Texas and Louisiana. When you wire money, it's anonymous. Anybody can go pick it up. It's very difficult, especially across state lines, to get video from the person that actually picked it up. It's almost as if a ghost took your money and left. Once it's gone, it's gone. You don't even, they don't even really, if the names they use on the wires don't even have to be correct. So you wouldn't even really know who to look for a lot of times. We stopped it before she lost too much money, and I actually, you mentioned a lot of the scam paperwork that you've got. I've got a file on my desk. If you want to send me stuff that you get, I'd like to keep it so when we have meetings like this, I show people what it looks like, and everybody I show to, they all start nodding their heads and going, I've got that. I've seen that before. If it's too good, like you said before, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. There's no bank out there that's going to send you $1 million. There's no Nigerian prince that has a bunch of money that wants to share with you or needs your bank account to facilitate a transfer. One thing I would like to share, if you think it can't happen to you, I'll tell you a story. I would imagine, Major, that you're probably swamped with tax fraud right about now.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't take much for someone who has access to your information to be bought. And unfortunately, somebody who's earning not much money, who's offered $2,000 cash for names and Social Security numbers, will often come up with names and Social Security numbers. It's unfortunate, but it occurs. These people will then take those names, Social Security numbers through internet software, they'll file a tax return and get the refund. And then when the legitimate person, the real person, goes to file their tax refund, they are denied, their return is denied, states that they've already filed. And then they're tied up for months, sometimes years, trying to get the IRS to give them their refund, to convince them that they are the true person. When that person tries to find out who stole their money, the IRS won't tell them, citing privacy laws, which is ironic. So if you think it can't happen to you, last year this happened to a well-educated woman and tied up a significant refund for about 8 months, and it was my wife. If it can happen to my wife, it can happen to you, especially as many times as I told her not to do anything. There was nothing she did wrong. Somebody got her information. She didn't know it until the refund was rejected. The only thing that would have prevented that, actually there's really, I don't know of anything that would prevent it. A credit freeze probably wouldn't have prevented that. So be careful. And if you want to send me your stuff, I'd gladly collect it.
I'd like to brag on our Sheriff's Department. We closed out the largest state tax fraud scam in Georgia history about 5 months ago. Shannon Bradley, who actually owned a tax service, he would break into other tax services, steal the servers, download the identities, and filed $6 million in fraudulent tax returns, $1 million in state tax returns. Federal government wouldn't cooperate with us, so we had to go for the state tax returns. And there were over 1,700 fraudulent tax returns filed. It was massive beyond belief. But we seized about $500,000 worth of goods, and he's serving a 40-year sentence right now and is going to be paying that money back too. But good work by our Sheriff's Department as well.
What I do is I never give them enough money, so there is no money for them to come back and take. So, and then on the, going back to the Social Security number, I put down the last 4 digits of my Social Security number. I don't put the full number down. If they want it, they'll ask, but they never have. They never have.
Excellent. Yeah.
This is just a tidbit of information happened to come to mind. A young lady who resides taking care of her mother at Walton, she went to the hospital, to the emergency room. She didn't read her paperwork before she left. When she got home, she had somebody else's paperwork with all their information on it and never found out who had hers. So beware. When you're leaving these places, make sure it's yours.
I'd like to know how. I'd like to know how they get your medical information.
What was the question?
How do they get
How does anyone get your medical information? Because I get all kinds of phone calls about everything. Do you need you need a wheelchair? You're diabetic. You know, they know everything.
John, you
Or
might
they're
have,
guessing.
you might have a good answer. I've got two answers for you. One is internet searches are tracked. If you ever search for diabetic equipment or wheelchairs, that sort of thing is okay.
I've never done
And
that.
the other is sometimes that information is purchased by criminals from people that work in those offices. A $2,000 cash tax-free goes a long way sometimes.
Dumpster diver.
Excellent.
And mail.
And-
Steal your mail, too.
Someone called me the other day. I don't do nothing. Someone called me the other day and said that I had two free tickets to the Bahamas. And all I needed to do was send them $2,000 to get from Florida to the ship.
Do you need somebody to go with you? I could use a vacation.
Yeah. She says if you've got the 2,000.
I was right there, and I have a answering machine, and I was just listening, and I knew that it was a scam.
Hey, have you put your phone number on the do not call registry?
No, I haven't.
I would highly suggest that. You can go online. Doesn't work anymore?
They manipulate it and it shows up a number.
Okay.
And then you gotta call it back, it's not even working out.
I've called it right back and said, you've reached Verizon Wireless, the number you called is no longer in service.
Oh, my.
And yet it just
Maybe they
called
need to
back.
re-up it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's not.
I put my cell phone in
So,
I went to the post office and had them stop all that junk mail.
So, on one of the items, I'm not sure who covers this, but so there's certain things out there now, and you can buy them on the internet, and it'll make your telephone number look like somebody else's. So, when you go back to the thought process, who called whom, right? So, if I called the district attorney's office, I know I'm calling them, but if they're calling me or the sheriff's office is calling me, please don't. You know, we had one presentation, they said, you know, we're the sheriff's office. We're not going to call and tell you we're going to come and arrest you. We're just going to come arrest you, right? So if they're calling you, you know, one of the things that a lot of us are, I know here in this audience, are polite, and you hate to hang up, and you hate to say no, and you hate to do this, but you need to do that. And whether someone comes to your door, same thing. We had one presentation, and the woman said she lives in a house or a condo that has 2 floors, and she always goes to the second floor to the window and looks out and says, whatever it is, leave it there, I'll pick it up later. I'm not answering the door, so just leave it there, you know? And they say, well, we just want to talk to you. We just, no, whatever you got, just leave it right there. I'll pick it up later. So, we've, has everyone had this one yet at 3 a.m.? John talked about this a little bit. It's a ploy, right? It's going to work on a number of different senses for you. One, you're sound asleep, hopefully. And the other is, it's a grandchild. They're saying it's a grandchild of yours or someone, and I really need help right now. And we haven't heard from Chief Flynn yet, so you might be able to give us a recommendation or two in terms of getting the phone calls in the middle of the night. You know, if you don't send me the money, you know, I'm going to go to jail or something like that. So.
Sure. I would really echo everything that you said about, you know, I personally, if I don't recognize, and I on my phone it has caller ID. If I don't recognize at least the place it's coming from, I just don't answer it. If it's something important, they'll leave a message and I'll call them back. And you know, that helps screen it out. Sometimes I look, you know, it happens all the time. And I am on the do not call list, but, it happens all the time. But if I see I'm getting a call from Oregon or Utah or something, and I don't know anyone there, I'm just do not answer it. I don't even engage them.
Any thoughts or questions on this? Again, it's
I was just going to share, Jeff.
Oh, yes,
my
absolutely,
father actually passed away over the summer, and about 2 months later, I don't know if y'all have heard this one. This is in Connecticut. My mother started receiving phone calls from his cell phone number. So someone had found out he had passed away and somehow was able to manipulate it, whether it was through that software you were talking about. And she was getting these calls from my quote-unquote father, and it was very disturbing, very disturbing. And I haven't seen anybody be able to track who that was or what. But I could see someone who's not, they're unhappy, they're going through a lot of emotions, buying into whatever that is, thinking, oh yeah, you know how to talk to them, you're psychic, that type of thing.
Jeff, if I could pick up on something Jessica's talking about, one of the things that and John mentioned it too, that I've learned and we've seen a lot here in the Elder Abuse Task Force over the last couple of years is if you really take a look at what kinds of things make elderly people more vulnerable victims. We talk to, just like we are tonight, and we'll have conversations during our presentation and usually afterwards, and people call and they call on the tip line, and we make a lot of contacts with elderly people. And we often ask them, what's it like to be you? What's it like when you're in your 80s or 90s, and why do these things happen? It's, sometimes it seems so silly, an elderly person who seems to be of sound mind, and they'll respond to this thing. Wow, you mean I won a trip to the Bahamas? Or, wow, you're so-and-so and you're a relative of so-and-so, and they're excited. And one of the things that we've learned, and I hear it again and again, one of the biggest problems that elderly people have, and over and over, that cause them to want to have any reason to talk to engage someone in what they think is intelligent conversation. Biggest problem is loneliness. They will tell you again and again. And what happens in our society, too often elderly people are abandoned. They're left alone, or kids or loved ones, even though a lot of their peers tend to die off, and that's sad enough, but they're, people that may have some responsibility for them tend to, well, if I put them in that care home, I won't ask too many questions, I'll put them in there. I'll put them here, put them with this one relative that's willing to take them. They may not be the most scrupulous person, but, I'll satisfy my responsibility or my guilt that I've done all I can for them. And people are left to vegetate. And that breeds loneliness, and it breeds depression. And even depression and loneliness are not normal conditions. You can get treatment for them, but that's really what people say. Just to have someone to talk to me, to have an intelligent conversation, I know, cognitively I know this may not make a lot of sense, like the Bahama trip. But here's somebody who's willing to have a back and forth and talk to me, and as human beings, we need that, So the point I wanted to make is what we tell lots of folks. If you know someone who's elderly or you're related to someone who's elderly, go and see them. The best thing you can do, go and visit them, contact them. And when you go to visit them, use common sense. Look around. And if you see things that the common sense person, like you see that they've got, there's a prescription bottle there, and they're supposed to take one pill a day for 30 days, and it was issued 3 months ago, and there's nothing there. Or it was issued yesterday or the day before, and the bottle's empty. Common sense tells you something is wrong. If you see the person is malnourished, or they're they have some kind of complaint, don't write it off. Always, people are so quick to say, well, it's dementia. They don't really know what they're talking about. they're just complaining because they're unhappy. Listen and pay attention. I think one of the big problems, and I like to tell a story of an experience I had that really gave me some insight into our society's the way we look at elderly people. There are some things wrong with the way our society regards the elderly and listens to them. And the story is this, and I ask everyone who's heard me tell this before, please bear with me because there are folks in the audience that I haven't seen before. But I went very early in my career as a policeman. I went to a training course one day about and it was going to be put on by a very experienced nurse who had a lot of background in geriatrics and working with the elderly. And she was going to give us a talk on elder abuse, so a good-sized audience. And we got in there, and this very senior nurse, and she comes in, and she says to us as a group, she said, "I'd like to describe one of my patients to you." Now, we know we're there for a presentation about the elderly and crime against the elderly and those sorts of things. I'd like to tell you about, describe one of my patients to you. And my patient can't feed herself. She can't control her toilet habits. She is completely dependent on other people for food and shelter and nutrition. She can't communicate with anyone. She sometimes wakes up even in the middle of the night crying loudly and uncontrollably, and we really don't know the reason. And you look at people in the class and they'll listen to this, and we all have a look like we all have on our face right now, a look of pity and apathy. Oh, that's, and you picture this poor old, this person. And then she says, "And I'd like to show you a photograph of my patient." And she holds up a photograph of a newborn baby. And immediately, the people in the room, you see smiles break out. And the expressions on all of our faces were, oh, look, the feelings that we have towards a baby. Isn't it cute? Isn't it wonderful? Is it, oh, well, we've been tricked and whatnot. But the point she was making was powerful. Our attitudes towards the elderly are much different than our attitudes towards a baby who exhibits the exact same symptoms, the exact same situation. It presents differently. You don't know that until you see the photograph, and it tells you something about our attitudes. So I'll kind of wind it up by saying, we all need to, one of the things that we try to do with the Elder Abuse Task Force is public awareness. Be aware of the problems of the elderly. Be sympathetic to them. Use common sense and common care to try to help elderly people because, as Mr. Melvin showed you on the charts, it's going to be a whole lot more of them. Personally, I hope to be an elderly person in Cobb County myself one day. So, we're all going to be there, but if we can change the way that people look at the elderly, we'll all be doing something good for all of us.
Question?
Do you think as the baby boomers join this elder group that they'll be looked at differently?
It could be. I mean, the baby boomer group is, as demographics go, is really unusual. There is a bulge in our population. You saw those charts that escalate. There's a bulge. There's a large group that were born during certain years that are moving up, and they do. They have different. If you ever look at the political views of people in that group, they tend to be a little bit. I don't mean this literally, but they tend to be a little bit schizophrenic about the way they look at things. I am a baby boomer, okay, and you tend to view, you won't fall neatly into any category. A lot of swing attitudes. So I would say yes, but there's something I just learned recently. We write articles about different things that concern the elder and elder abuse, and a number of us write articles for various publications. And recently we were doing one about Charlie Sewell is a retired chief of Powder Springs, and he's on our task force, and he was writing one about what responsibility do young people have for elderly people? What moral responsibility and what legal responsibility? And, you know, I think we can all talk comfortably about, you know, from the generations representing this, we can talk what our moral responsibility is. But what Chief Sewell found was that there is also a legal responsibility. If you have the means in Georgia, on the books, there is a law that says if you have the means and there's a relative, you have a responsibility to contribute to and participate in their care. It's rarely ever seen and very rarely ever used, but it's there. And, you know, it's something I think we hope to dust off and make more people aware of as time goes on.
And do you think that as the multi-generations are still with us, I mean, you still see the 80 and 90-year-olds, but then you have some of the baby boomers that have already come, that across the generations, are they interacting in a way that's constructive? Or do you see that as we baby boomers become more prevalent, that the attitude towards the elder totally changes?
Yeah. Well,
because you see a lot of the baby boomers were from the 60s and we're radical and we like change and all that stuff. So you have to realize that when you interact, is it going to change how all of you sitting there are going to interact with us and yet still be able to take care of those that are from World War II, World War I?
Well, then, Diane, I can say, I mean, everybody here is a testimony to how it's changed. I mean, if you look at this group of folks, you've got all of these people here on a Tuesday night. It was a work day. Everybody has huge caseloads and a lot going on, and they see it as important, which means that there's people out there that see the change as well. So I think ultimately it has to do with the community, and this is the community, and we are working really hard to make that happen. I know we have to wrap up in a second, but I did want to have Debbie talk about a little bit about what she does, because we have this resource here tonight that we rarely have. So I just want to say what you do and just.
I mainly wanted to make sure everyone has the number, and I've got some little cards. Adult Protective Services is through the Division of Aging. It's state of Georgia. And we have the mandate to do investigations of abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. We also do self-neglect. Our program is for people disabled and elderly. Disabled, of course, you have to have some condition, you know, developmentally or otherwise, to be 18 and up. We define elderly as 65 plus. I can give you the phone number. You can call in reports. We can get on the website and make reports. The website also has a fax number. You can fax it in. We do accept anonymous referrals. That's not good, because if we get stuck with an investigation, then we don't have anybody to call back. Our reporter source is always confidential. And one thing that I do want to point out, and it's very difficult with some of the elderly, everything we've discussed now, especially we're seeing more scams. We are hard pressed to convince these people, and in every other aspect of their lives, they handle their lives very well. I have spent hours trying to figure it out and find myself. I'll be 60 this year. I'm like, oh my, I mean, would I ever do that? I don't think so, but it's scary, you know. The loneliness, the isolation, it's just a big red flag in a lot of the cases we see. But I do want to give y'all, and I have some of these cards if anyone wants them. Real quickly, our office in Marietta houses 8 case managers. We cover Cobb, Cherokee, Douglas, and North Fulton. So we're in our cars a lot. Just, you know, trying to, of course, make make our visits, make our collaterals, do our investigations. We work very closely with law enforcement. Every report we receive is sent to the proper law enforcement jurisdiction is within 24 hours. Now, obviously, law enforcement's not going to get involved in self-neglect, and with their caseloads, they're not going to get involved on all of the even exploitation, cases. Cobb County should be very proud of the fact that all of the police jurisdictions, I cannot say enough positive. The DA, all of them are only a phone call away, an email away, and we certainly try to reciprocate. But Cobb County is very fortunate with some of the dedicated detectives and investigators that we have. Let me just quickly give you the intake number, but like I say, I've got some of these little cards for quick reference. It's 1-866-552-4464. And there's a menu there which actually you can get other information too. It's not just for protective services. Oh, I've never been told I talk too fast. So, okay. It's 1-866-552-4464. And like I say, I'll be happy to give. I think I have plenty of these. So, thank you.
We'll take one more question.
Quickly, so that I understand, so we have the anonymous tip line, and then the number that you gave, and then what if I called the police? Like, what order should I approach this if I had someone that I felt like, an elder or a parent?
I might be able to clear that up for you. If you call the anonymous tip line that's on the screen right now, it'll be reviewed through Marietta Investigative Services. It'll probably be routed to my desk directly. If you call your jurisdiction's police department, where do you live? Do you live in Marietta?
Findings.
Yeah. It could be Atlanta PD. It could be Cobb County PD. It'll get routed either to Detective Lisa Wells or the Atlanta PD equivalent. Lisa Wells is with the county. If you call the tip line through, or what do you call it?
Adult Protective
Services. If you call it the APS, Adult Protective Services tip line, they'll review it and send it to the appropriate agency. All these phone numbers will get routed to the right officer. I get emails from Debbie all the time. We talk a lot through email. So either way, it's going to get to the right person. If you call, even though you live in Vinings, you call this number that gets routed through Marietta PD, I will get it through to the right detective.
Yeah, and if it's an emergency, call 911. And it's an emergency if you know of an elderly person that is not getting proper food, not getting their medication, that is in danger or severe pain or something. That's an emergency. You call 911 and we'll get the right public safety people to that person.
Oh, one more question. Just one more, Jessica.
Okay, Jeff.
Last but not least, those of us who work in long-term care where our residents reside with us, how do we get help for those people? We're having difficulty finding someone when they're institutionalized to respond to us as caregivers when we notice something that may be an issue.
So an institutional caregiver is noticing that there's a problem and they'd like to bring it to the attention of someone. Who should they?
Adult Protective Services, if a person is in a long-term care facility and there's concern, we do have investigations in nursing homes or assisted livings of financial exploitation. Of course, and I'm sure you know this, if internally there is a concern, of course, if the concern is a staff member, then another agency investigates those. But I think your question is more to the resident, I guess, not having their finances managed or their needs met. Is that? Right.
Can
No.
If I could address some of this, and maybe this will answer, and I think what Debbie is saying is right. APS is going to deal with people outside of a facility most of the time. There's another agency, Healthcare Facility Regulation, HFR, which deals with licensed facilities. So they're going to deal with that. But another state agency that you might need to be aware of is the State Ombudsman Office. And so the ombudsmans are the only people who are actually not mandated reporters. All the other people are mandated reporters. They're going to be required to report any exploitation or abuse. But the ombudsman's office might be able to help you in providing advocacy for whatever victim that you have. And they're specifically designed for long-term care facilities of some variety. They go into those facilities and they will work with the patients or the clients there to help advocate for them, just like we have victim services at the DA's office who work with our victims, and their role is to deal with the victims and help them with whatever resources or put them in touch with resources. That's what an ombudsman would do, and there's a state agency for that.
Let me just address, I think the important thing is, you think there's something that bothers you, just call the tip line and let the professionals decide who it goes to. You don't have to sit there and decide, do I call this number or that number? Call that number, and as you just heard, all the contacts they have, we'll get somebody to talk to you and help. If you leave a name or number, we can go through, because nobody here is going to try to jump in somebody else's jurisdiction. This is why we have a task force, so we can combine together and try to get the right person to address certain problems.
Okay, Jeff.
So okay, that's it. We are going to get all of these folks to actually come down and speak with anyone that wishes to stay around. And most of the times we have folks that do stick around that have a personal issue that they'd really like to talk to someone but don't want to necessarily ask the question out in front of everyone. Absolutely, this is a time we'll turn off the cameras and the microphones and all that kind of stuff. I want to thank you all for not only just showing up tonight, but really participating. It helps us to hear sort of your thoughts and concerns from all different points of view, and it allows you to see some folks that are out there doing things on a day-to-day basis, that they're really out there for your benefit, for your family's benefit, your loved ones, your neighbors, and all that sort of stuff. So I want to thank the panel members here for coming out.
Thank you, guys.